The time is 11:03 a.m. The date is March 18, 1945. High above the splintered, frozen landscape of eastern Germany, First Lieutenant Julian Jules O'Connell, 24 years old, hunches forward. The cold is a living thing, seeping through his heavy flight suit, clinging to the aluminum of his P-51D Mustang, nicknamed the Wanderer. He has completed 58 combat missions. Jules is not flying a bomber today. He is a fighter escort. His primary task to guard the lumbering four-engine giants from the new, terrifying threat the Luftwaffe has unleashed, the Messerschmitt Mi 262 jet fighter. His precise location, 30 miles northeast of Dresden, Germany, hugging the cloud base at 28,000 feet. The air is thin, crisp, and lethal. The cloud cover is a patchy, blinding white, offering momentary sanctuary, followed by stark, terrifying visibility. The mission objective is simple, but essential: shepherd the 362nd Bomb Group to their target, a critical Luftwaffe airfield outside Cottbus, and ensure they have the protection they need to neutralize the primary base for the German jets. Every one of the bombers is a flying aluminum coffin, each carrying 10 men. Jules is flying in the Purple Heart corner, the vulnerable rear right position of a four-plane squadron formation. The bomber stream is a dark, heavy scar against the white sky. He checks his instruments. Airspeed 290 knots. Outside air temperature 40 Dowser circle text $. He is on 40% oxygen mix, breathing shallow, regular puffs. He knows the mortality statistics. Over the course of the war, a U.S. Army Air Force flyer had a greater chance of being killed than a Marine at Guadalcanal. Fighter pilots, though slightly safer than bomber crews, still faced a 1 in 3 chance of not completing a standard tour. Suddenly, the world rips open. The attack comes not with the expected whine of propeller-driven fighters, but with a terrifying, high-pitched shriek. It is a sound no piston engine pilot can mistake. The enemy is the Messerschmitt Mi 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. It is traveling at over 540 miles, a speed that makes Jules' P-51, fast as it is, feel like a biplane. Jules has one moment to register the 3 dark, swept-wing shapes flashing into view. He sees the thick, oily black smoke pouring from the enemy's twin Junkers, Jumo 04 engines. The German jets are executing a classic pass-and-dash attack, a high-speed slash through the bomber stream, firing devastating volleys of 30mm Mk-108 cannon shells, each shell a miniature grenade, before disappearing before the escort can react. His eyes instinctively track the lead jet. The Mi-262's nose lights up, a blinding yellow-white flash. Tracer rounds, fat and slow-looking from the jet's massive cannon, streak toward the lead B-17. Jules sees the explosion, not a spectacular fireball, but a sharp, hard thump in the B-17's tail, followed by the sight of the bomber's entire rudder assembly simply vanishing. The B-17 begins a slow, irreversible spiral. Then Jules's own crisis hits. He whips the Wanderer into a sharp 7.5 G brake turn to intercept the trailing jet. This maneuver is reckless against a jet, but necessary to draw fire away from the bombers. The acceleration presses his eyeballs deep into their sockets. He strains to track the jet's incredible velocity. He opens fire, his .650 caliber M2 Browning machine guns hammering out 200 rounds per minute apiece. The noise is deafening, the vibration blurring his vision. His tracer rounds fall hopelessly behind the jet, a spray of futile fire. The second jet, having completed its pass, is now turning wide to come back through. It is an experienced pilot, executing a perfect, high-speed reversal. The jet's wing-mounted cannon flashes again. The jet is not aiming for a bomber. It is aiming for Jules O'Connell. A terrifying cracking sound echoes through the Mustang's cockpit. It is not the sound of flak or machine gun fire, but the distinct, structural groan of high-velocity impact. One of the jet's 30mm shells, designed to obliterate a bomber's engine, hits the forward fuselage of the Wanderer. The shell does not explode. It impacts the thick armor plating protecting the oil cooler section just beneath the engine. But the sheer kinetic energy of the impact is devastating. The shock wave travels through the airframe, hitting the instrument panel like a sledgehammer. 11:05 a.m. The P-51's entire electrical system immediately shuts down. The panel goes completely dark. The magnetic compass spins madly, then locks. The artificial horizon slumps. The gyro compass is dead. Even the rudimentary clock, a secondary instrument, stops at 11:05 a.m. The only sound is the roar of the Packard Merlin VI 1657 engine and the scream of the wind. In an instant, at 28,000 feet, in the teeth of a jet attack, Jules O'Connell has gone blind. He has no airspeed indicator, no altimeter, no directional guidance. His entire world has been reduced to noise and vibration. His opening crisis, he is flying an 18,000-pound high-performance aircraft, completely IFR, instrument flight rules, without any working instruments. And the second German jet is already lining up for its next pass. The immediate aftermath is a horrifying silence in the cockpit, a vacuum where the comforting hum of the gyros should be. The silence is immediately replaced by the pounding, rhythmic clatter of the Merlin engine and the high-speed rush of the atmosphere over the canopy. Jules O'Connell is flying purely on the feel of the stick in his hand and the seat beneath him. At 28,000 feet, without instruments, he is only seconds from a high-speed stall or an uncontrolled spiral dive. He has no way to check if he is climbing, descending, or flying straight and level. He immediately recognizes the gravity of the situation. Full electrical failure due to a single catastrophic hit to the forward power bus. The entire flight control system is manually controlled via cables and push rods. The mechanical systems are fine, but the navigation, communication, and key flight information systems are inert. He has 4 planes in his squadron. The flight leader, Lieutenant Edward Albright, is shouting into the radio, his voice cracking with urgency. "Wanderer, I'm taking 3 down low. Confirm status, over. Wanderer, do you read?" Jules flips his radio switch. Nothing. The hit has also killed the SCR-522 VHF radio set. He is not only blind, but mute. Suddenly, the first jet, the one that hit him, flashes beneath him, completing its first high-speed arc back toward the bomber stream. Jules realizes the 1v5 situation he is now in. There are 3 Me-262s, attacking the 2 remaining Mustangs from his immediate squadron. He is flying effectively as a solo operator, crippled, facing the 3 jets, and now also the returning pressure of the 2 escorting Focke-Wulf FW-190D9s that were spotted earlier. He is outnumbered 5-1, and he is blind. The impossible problem: he must maneuver a high-performance fighter in a 3-dimensional space against enemies that are faster and higher tech without being able to see his attitude, pitch, roll, altitude, or airspeed. Attitude control. The only way to maintain a straight and level attitude is by keeping the physical force on his body, the G-force, perfectly centered in the seat. Any change in pitch or roll results in an off-center force, which is his only sensory feedback. But this is wildly inaccurate in a turn. Altitude control. If he climbs, he risks a high-altitude stall, loss of lift, with no stall warning indicator. If he dives, he risks exceeding the P-51's VA velocity never exceed, of 505 km/h, leading to catastrophic airframe failure. His only gauge is the decreasing outside air temperature as he climbs and the increasing pitch of the wind noise as he dives. Target acquisition. He cannot visually see the jets when they are more than 500 yards away because of their speed. He must rely entirely on sound. 11:08 a.m. The three Me-262s are exploiting their advantage. Speed. They are not dogfighting. They are making repeated high-speed passes. They strike, peel off to a distance of 2 miles, turn around, and accelerate back in. Jules, instead of trying to follow them, a futile effort that would drain his speed and fuel, begins to improvise a solution. He must make the Wanderer a less predictable target. He forces the P-51 into a slow, constant, uncoordinated wallow. He holds a shallow bank, constantly moving his stick and rudder. This makes him a nightmare to line up in a high-speed pass. His focus narrows to a hypersensitive awareness of the Merlin engine's sound. He uses the noise as his altimeter and airspeed indicator. If the engine noise decreases, but the air rush noise increases, he is in a dive. He must pull back. If the engine noise increases without a throttle change, and the G-force pushes him down, he is climbing. He must push forward to avoid a stall. He is flying the plane as if it were an extension of his own body, relying on the acoustic feedback. The secondary crisis. The oil temperature gauge, though mechanical, is also now showing erratic readings because the protective panel has been structurally warped by the shell impact. He is getting oil cooling, but he is concerned about a slow, unfixable leak. He cannot know for sure. If the engine seizes, he has a few minutes before he is a falling wreck. 11:11 a.m. A sudden sharp change in pitch, a whine overlaid on the Merlin's roar, signals the approach of one of the jets. The jets are so fast that by the time a pilot visually sees them, it is already too late. Jules has to turn into the sound. He executes a brutal left-hand scissor turn, pulling +6 Gs. The jet flashes by, its cannon fire missing his tail by a hair's breadth. The concussive blast of the passing jet momentarily blinds him. He is not alone. The other crew members he must protect are the entire bomber stream. 11:13 a.m. The two remaining Mustangs from his squadron, led by Albright, are now engaged with the two FW-190D9s, high up. The three jets have a clear path to the main target, the bombers. Jules realizes he is the only remaining line of defense. He must intercept. He begins to push the Wanderer to its maximum safe speed, the wind noise howling a dangerous chorus. He has to trust his improvised airspeed gauge, the pitch of the wind and the pitch of the engine. He catches a glimpse of the three jets lining up for another pass. They are flying in a staggered V formation. They have just left their distant turn and are beginning their acceleration. Jules has to break this formation immediately. He points the nose of the Wanderer straight down and pours on the throttle, entering a controlled, blind dive. 300 knots, 350 knots, 400 knots. He is plunging toward the jets from above. The G-force is pulling him hard. He risks red out, loss of vision due to blood pooling in the lower body. 450 knots, 480 knots. The sound of the wind rushing over the canopy is now a terrifying, high-pitched scream. The entire aircraft is vibrating violently near its structural limit. 11:15 a.m. Jules pulls out of the dive, with a desperate, heavy stick action, maintaining the high speed. He is now moving much faster than the jets expect. He has traded altitude for the one thing he needs, a temporary speed advantage. He is directly behind the third Me-262. He can hear the jet now, a different, higher-pitched shriek. He doesn't use his sight to aim. He uses the sound. He pushes the stick slightly left, then slightly right, aligning the Merlin's roar with the jet's whine. The combination of noises forms a single, terrifying chord. He presses the trigger. The 650 caliber machine guns rip into the jet's tail section. The massive slugs tear through the thin metal near the turbine engine. The jet immediately trails a thick column of black smoke. Kill 1. The pilot of the second jet, distracted by his wingman's death spiral, breaks formation. This is the moment Jules has been waiting for. If you want to see how Julian O'Connell's crew faced down the world's first jet fighters with no instruments, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to O'Connell. 11:16 a.m. The second Me-262, momentarily confused, executes a tight horizontal turn to re-engage. This is a fatal mistake against a P-51. The jet has to slow down for the turn, reducing its massive speed advantage. Jules is already turning inside him, the Merlin V-1657 responding instantly. He has the speed advantage he gained from the dive. He is on the jet's 6. Again, he aligns the sounds. The jet's whine grows louder, centered in his ears. He holds the aim for a long burst, pumping hundreds of rounds into the fuselage. The jet explodes not in one piece, but shatters, the explosion tearing the thin metal apart. Kill 2. He is now in a 1v3 situation, but he has forced the enemy to abandon their formation and their high-speed, predictable attack. They are now dogfighting, which is where the Mustang, despite its lower speed, excels. The first jet, the flight leader, breaks high, trying to use the jet's superior climb rate to escape. The third jet attacks from below. 11:18 a.m. Jules, still flying blind, executes a high-speed roll. A nearly impossible maneuver without an artificial horizon. He is counting on the feel of the G-force pinning him to the seat. The Mi-262 below him is forced to pull out of its attack. The flight leader, the most experienced pilot, is now back. He is coming in at a massive speed, cannon blazing. Jules sees the tracers, 30mm rounds arcing toward him. He pulls a hard, desperate Immelmann turn, a half loop followed by a half roll, which is impossible to fly straight without instruments. He feels the plane stall out briefly at the top of the loop, the nose dropping. He has lost all control for a sickening split second. But this momentary, uncontrolled flight saves him. The jet's rounds pass beneath his fuselage. He recovers the plane from the stall, now pointing directly at the third jet, which is coming in for the kill. He is head-on, a moment of pure, terrifying commitment. He fires. The jet is hit squarely in the nose. The cockpit explodes in a plume of smoke and shrapnel. Kill 3. 11:20 a.m. The battle is far from over. Jules has defeated the 3 jets, but the 2 FW-190D9s, freed from the 2 other Mustangs, which are now low on fuel and disengaging, are back. The Mustangs are also lower and engaged in a struggle to survive. He is flying the Wanderer, still completely blind on his panel, now at 15,000 feet. He is bleeding speed and altitude. He is low on fuel and low on ammunition. He has no way to measure his fuel. He must rely on the engine's RPM sound to infer the rate of consumption and the feel of the throttle. Based on his earlier high-speed dive and engagement, he estimates he has no more than 35 minutes of flight time remaining. 11:22 a.m. The two FW-190s, piston engine fighters, are now at his altitude. This is a fair fight, but Jules is fighting a fair fight while blindfolded. He has to get out of the fight and escape the enemy territory. The geographic progression must now be swift. He needs to move southeast, out of eastern Germany, and toward Allied-held territory in Italy. This is an agonizingly long route, requiring passage over Czechoslovakia and Austria. He pushes the stick forward, initiating a long, shallow, high-speed dive toward the ragged snow-covered forest floor. He needs the cover. The two FW-190s give chase. They are now on his 6. Jules flies in a shallow S pattern, attempting to make himself a difficult target. The sensory details are overwhelming. The cold is now biting through the cockpit, a sign of the altitude drop. The wind noise is a constant screaming roar, telling him he is still maintaining his high speed. The vibration of the engine, his only friend, is a low, insistent thrum. 11:25 a.m. He must take a chance. He knows the FW-190s are now close. He risks a near vertical bank, pushing the P-51 sideways. The FW-190 pilots, convinced they have him, overshoot. He is now in a position of fleeting advantage behind the two FW-190s. He has time for one burst. He fires at the trailing FW-190, a short, controlled burst, using the last of his tracers to check the stream. The shots hit the radial engine. A plume of oil and coolant erupts. The FW-190 pilot pulls up, trailing smoke, and begins a forced, slow descent toward the hostile land. Kill 4. The remaining FW-190 pilot, shocked by the sudden loss of his two wingmen, tries to escape. He executes a series of sharp, evasive maneuvers, diving toward the tree line. 11:27 a.m. Jules gives chase, still flying blind on his panel, following the fleeing fighter. They are now flying at 2,000 feet, just above the jagged, snow-covered peaks of a small mountain range near the Czech border. This low altitude is fraught with danger, as the ground is rising and falling sharply, and he has no altimeter. He is flying by the sound of the trees, the pitch of the wind noise changing as they zip past him. The FW-190 pilot, desperate, attempts a sharp turn. Jules is flying an absolute line, the Merlin V-1657 screaming. He closes the distance. He fires his last long burst. The rounds tear into the canopy and cockpit of the FW-190. The plane snaps violently into the trees. Kill 5. 11:30 a.m. Silence. The fight is over. Jules O'Connell is alone, over enemy territory, in a crippled aircraft with no instruments, no radio, and critically low fuel. The only way to navigate is by the sun's position and a vague memory of the mission map. The internal clock is 11:30 a.m., estimated. He has only one choice: fly a south-southeast heading, hoping to cross the Alps and make it to the nearest Allied-held airbase in northern Italy. He throttles back to an economy cruise setting, relying on the smooth, low-vibration hum of the engine to indicate an optimal fuel consumption rate. He keeps the plane straight by balancing the feeling of air pressure on his cheeks. Any slip to the left or right creates a draft on one side of his face. The physical toll is immense. His neck and back are screaming from the violent high G maneuvers. His head is pounding. 12:15 p.m. An hour of flying has passed. He is certain he is over the heavily defended territory of Austria. He risks a brief climb through a cloud bank to get a high-altitude fix. As he climbs blindly through the thick whiteout, the plane begins to stall. The control stick goes momentarily slack in his hand. He pushes the nose forward desperately, fighting the lack of information. He recovers, breaking out of the top of the cloud at an estimated 25,000 feet. The momentary glimpse of the sun tells him he is roughly on course. 1:40 p.m. He has been flying on a dying engine for 2 hours. He is now over the Dolomite Alps. The jagged snow-covered mountains are unforgiving. He is running on fumes. He has to get down. He cannot risk crossing the main Italian front line. He must attempt a forced landing in the mountainous region of the South Tyrol, hoping for a lucky break with the locals. He begins his blind descent, once again using the sound of the wind for his altimeter. He has to trust the engine until the last possible moment. 1:35 p.m. The Merlin engine, after 3.5 hours of hard flying, finally begins to cough. It is the sound of total fuel exhaustion. The propeller windmills lazily. The only sound is the whistling rush of the air. Jules O'Connell is now committed to a dead stick landing. He is at an estimated 5,000 feet above the valley floor. The mountains loom on either side. He picks a long, snow-covered field nestled between two peaks, near a small, isolated village. He pushes the nose down to gain enough speed for control. He lowers the landing gear manually, the emergency procedure requiring a heavy physical pump action on the manual hydraulic handle in the cockpit. The gear locks down with two satisfying metallic clunks. He lines up for the field. He has no flaps. The electrical motor is dead, so he is coming in dangerously fast. His final moments with the Wanderer are a blur of physical effort. He pulls the nose up at the last possible moment, bleeding off speed. The landing is brutal. The P-51 hits the snow-covered field at an estimated 120 meters. The landing gear immediately shears off in the deep, frozen snow. The fuselage slams into the earth. The nose, heavy with the engine, digs in. The entire aircraft twists violently, tearing itself apart. The forward canopy shatters. Jules is thrown forward against his harness. The sudden stop is agonizing. He feels a sharp, blinding pain in his left ankle and shoulder. The cockpit is filling with the nauseating smell of aviation fuel and burnt oil. He unbuckles his harness with shaking hands. His left ankle is clearly broken. The foot is at an unnatural angle. He has a blinding migraine and a deep laceration across his forehead from the canopy glass. He pulls himself out of the wreckage and collapses in the snow. 2 p.m. He is not alone for long. Within minutes, the sound of approaching voices and heavy boots echoes through the valley. 2 men, members of the local Wehrmacht garrison, find him, their rifles pointing directly at his chest. They are supported by a group of hostile, elderly members of the local militia. They search him, taking his escape kit, his flight map, now useless, and his watch, stuck at 11:05 a.m. Jules O'Connell is processed as a prisoner of war, POW. He is transported first to a small military field hospital, where his ankle is roughly set and bandaged. The medical details are stark. A compound fracture of the left tibia, requiring immobilization. His shoulder is merely a severe sprain. From there, he begins the long journey to the main POW processing center, Dulag Luft, Durchgangslager der Luftwaffe, Luftwaffe Transit Camp, near Oberursel, Germany. The journey takes 4 days by truck and rail, a brutal freezing experience in a crowded, unheated boxcar. April 1st, 1945. Jules arrives at his permanent camp, Stalag Luft Thurn, near Saigon, now Jagan, Poland. This is the famous camp for captured Allied aircrew. The initial processing is harsh. He is interrogated for 72 hours straight. his captors using the standard German technique of mixing threats with deceptive kindness, trying to glean any scrap of tactical information. He gives only name, rank, and serial number, following the Geneva Convention protocols. Camp name, Stalag Luft 3, Compound N, North Compound, for U.S. officers. Location, Sagan, Germany, now Żagań, Poland. Conditions. The compound is vast, with wooden barrack huts, surrounded by a double barbed wire fence and guard towers. The soil is sandy, making tunneling a constant, exhausting project. Population. At its peak, the camp holds over 10,000 Allied airmen. Jules spends 10 months in the camp, his ankle slowly healing without proper medical care. The pain is a constant companion. He is not a member of a bomber crew, so he does not have the benefit of the other crew members for emotional support, but he quickly finds camaraderie with other single-seat fighter pilots. His debriefing is focused on the Me-262 encounter. The German commanders are obsessed with understanding how an American piston-engine fighter managed to defeat 3 of their prized jets. Jules learns the devastating news months later through a new arrival. Lieutenant Edward Albright, flight leader, and his wingman survived the fight and made it back to base, their aircraft riddled with hits. They were severely injured. The 2 other Mustangs from his squadron, flown by Second Lieutenant William Foster and Sergeant Major Anthony Tony Rossi, were not so lucky. They ran into the 2 FW-190s after Jules broke off. Second Lieutenant William Foster, 23 years old, was shot down over the Sudetenland and died when his parachute failed to open. He never came home. Sergeant Major Anthony Rossi, 26 years old, was shot down over Austria and died instantly when his plane exploded mid-air. He never came home. The weight of this loss, 2 men who had counted on his protection, is immense. Jules is not alone in his survival. He carries their memory. January 27, 1945. The war in the East turns. The Soviet Red Army is advancing rapidly. The sound of distant artillery becomes a chilling reality. At 10 p.m., the entire camp is roused and forced onto the roads in a freezing, blizzard-swept forced march. The infamous Long March. Jules, his healing ankle burning with pain, marches for 3 weeks through the sub-zero temperatures, eventually ending up at Stalag 70A, near Moosburg, Bavaria, the largest POW camp in Germany. His survival during the ice march is a testament to the crew-like bond he formed with his fellow POWs who physically help him cover the miles. April 29th, 1945. The sounds of American tank engines and rifle fire echo outside the wire. At 10:30 a.m., the gates of Stalag 70A are blasted open by elements of the 14th Armored Division of General Patton's Third Army. Jules O'Connell is free. He is immediately taken to a field hospital for a proper debriefing and medical examination. The journey home is swift. By C-47 transport to the Allied recovery base in Le Havre, France, then on to a transport ship across the Atlantic, arriving back in the United States in late May 1945. Julian O'Connell returned to his home state of Massachusetts, settling in the suburbs of Boston. The trauma of flying blind and the intensity of the dogfight, not to mention the harsh reality of Stalag Luft 3rd, never truly left him, but he was a survivor. After the war, he attended college on the GI Bill, earning an engineering degree. He went on to have a highly successful career as a project engineer for a major aerospace company, ironically working on the very jet engine technology he had fought against. His meticulous attention to detail, honed by flying a blind plane, made him indispensable. He married his childhood sweetheart, Martha, and they raised 3 children. His attitude toward the mission was one of quiet solemnity. He rarely spoke of the 5 kills. He spoke only of the 2 men he lost. He believed his survival was a form of debt, requiring him to live a life worthy of their sacrifice. Army Air Force recognition. Jules O'Connell was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for extreme gallantry and risk of life in action against an enemy of the United States. He ended the war with the rank of captain and was promoted to major in the Air Force Reserve before resigning his commission. Crew reunions and bonds. Jules maintained a lifelong bond with the surviving pilots from his group. Every year, on the 60th anniversary of the mission, March 18th, he would meet with Edward Albright and his wingman. They were quiet affairs, focused on remembering the fallen. Edward Albright became a history teacher in Kansas. He never flew again, but dedicated his life to teaching the lessons of the war. His wingman, who was later identified as Second Lieutenant Harry Goodman, became a successful small-town lawyer in Texas and maintained a close connection to Jules until his death. Julian O'Connell passed away peacefully in his sleep in 2003 at the age of 82. His story matters because it encapsulates the very definition of wartime improvisation, not relying on technology, but on the innate connection between a pilot, his machine, and his own senses. He defeated the cutting edge of the enemy's technology using nothing but experience, courage, and the sound of the wind. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single, like tells YouTube, to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about a blind flight against the fastest planes in the world and the human mind overcoming impossible odds. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Captain Julian O'Connell and the Wanderer don't disappear into silence. Second Lieutenant William Foster died when his parachute failed to open. Sergeant Major Anthony Rossi died beside him when his plane exploded. They were 23 and 26 years old. They never came home. But the one man who survived carried their memory forward for 10 months in Stalag Luft III, for decades afterward in Massachusetts, and across America. And now, through this story, their names live on. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.